in 3, 2, 1. And Mark, if you just want to mention that we're here a little early.
Yeah.
Get started.
Good morning, everybody, or afternoon or evening, wherever you are. We are going to start in just about 2 minutes. And so hang tight. Watching my virtual hair float. All right, everyone, good morning. We're going to start in just 1 minute. Looking forward to seeing everyone. Or not seeing you, but talking to you and pretending to see you, at least. All right, good morning, everybody. We're just going to give another 30 seconds and then we're going to jump into our day. There's some action going on there, huh, Niobe, in New York?
Yeah, there always is. I hope it doesn't happen when I'm talking. There's always, screaming ambulances. But there's also birds. Can you hear the birds? I have birds out.
I can hear the birds. I wish I could hear the birds.
Yeah, the birds actually exist in New York.
Erin, what do you think? Should we jump in?
Let's get started. Looks good.
All right, thank you, Erin. So good morning, everyone, for the third time. As you all know, I'm Mark Brackett, Director of the Center for Emotional Intelligence, and just delighted to have all of you with us for our annual conference. We've got over 1,300 people from around the world working with us and thinking critically about how to integrate social and emotional learning in a systemic way to support all kids and the adults who are raising them and teaching them. And I don't want to take any time away this morning from my friend and colleague, Niobe Way, who is going to be our opening keynote presenter. I'm delighted to introduce you to her. Niobe and I met a number of years ago and have become friends. And the one thing I appreciate most about you, Niobe, I'm just going to be straightforward about this, is that I know that how I think about something is the way you're thinking about something. Exactly. And so if we're going to text each other, whatever it's going to be, it's always going to have the same theme. Yeah. Which I appreciate. It's nice to be around people that have that same mindset. Yeah. Just to give you a little background on Niobe, her bio does not give her justice, but briefly, Niobe is a professor of developmental psychology at NYU and the founder of an important project called PATCH, the Project for the Advancement of Our Common Humanity. She received her undergraduate degree from UC Berkeley, her doctorate in human development at Harvard. She did a postdoc actually at Yale, which is kind of cool. And her work focuses on the intersection of culture, context, and human development, with a particular focus on social and emotional development and how cultural ideologies influence families and developmental trajectories of children and adolescents in American and Chinese context. Naomi's published a lot of papers and some great books. And I'm going to stop there because I want her to speak much more than I do. Naomi, you've got the floor for about 20 minutes, then we're going to come back and I'm going to get to chat with you. So please enjoy and welcome.
Wonderful. Thank you, Mark. That was wonderful. I really appreciate the introduction. And I'm so glad to be here. Mark is a very dear friend and I've been following his work for a long time, and it's just a pleasure to be here. So thank you, Mark, and the team that's made it happen. So today what I want to do is talk to you about something called the crisis of connection among youth. It's actually a crisis of connection that you see around the world, not just among youth, but I'm going to be focusing on young people today. By the crisis of the connection, I mean the rising rates of depression, anxiety, suicide, mass violence, and other forms of violence, where people are showing increasingly disconnection from themselves and from each other. And the crisis of connection has been documented in all sorts of countries. We are definitely facing it in this country, in the United States, and particularly among young people, which is essentially those under 25, between 13 and 25, where the suicide rates are off the charts. We see all sorts of rates of depression and anxiety that we've never seen before at such high levels. So I want to think together about its roots, consequences, and solutions. And interestingly enough, my research on social emotional development among boys over the past 30 years provides critical insights into the roots of the crisis of connection, the consequences, and the solutions. So what I want to do today is tell you a story about what I learned from boys. It's a story of friendships in particular. My focus of research for the past 3 decades had been on friendships, boys' friendships in particular. And so I want to tell you what I've learned from listening to boys talk about their friendships. And I'm a developmental psychologist, and that means that I study kids I start to interview them, and we do surveys as well, when they're 12 or 13, and then I follow the same boys all the way through adolescence. So it's my studies are usually 5 or 6 years long, and I listen to them as they change over time in terms of how they talk about their friendships. So I'm going to tell you the story that they tell that is actually a larger story that I'll get to that as well. Okay, Aaron, you can go to the next slide. I'm drawing from 2 books today that you're welcome to check out on any website. One is called The Crisis of Connection. And next one, Aaron, please. And then the book I'll really be drawing from is my key book that came out about a decade ago, but I'm still interviewed about it all the time. Deep Secrets, Boys, Friendships, and the Crisis of Connection. And so what I'll be reading today is some quotes from the boys from this book. So what I'm going to do now for the next 10 minutes or so, I am going to be reading quotes from boys to tell you the story that boys taught me, but I'm going to tell you the story through their quotes. So what I want you to do is put your pen down, don't take notes when I'm talking, just listen to the boys and listen to the story that they tell you from early adolescence to late adolescence. They tell you a story about what it means to be human, what gets in the way of our humanity, the consequences and the solutions. Okay, so we're going to start with, sorry, Aaron, go back 1 second. Before we get to this part, I'm going to present 3 themes of boys, from boys interviews. And these are interviews I've conducted at this point, thousands of interviews. These interviews are from a group of about 200 interviews of boys I followed over 5 years. And there's 3 themes: shared secrets, the link to mental health, and the loss of friendships as they get older. So let's start with shared secrets, and you can hear what boys sound like. When asked the question, so it's critical that you understand when I read the quote what the question was. The question is, tell me about your friendships. And this is Jason, and he's about 13, 14 years old in this response. My best friend and I love each other. That's it. You have this thing that is deep, so deep it's within you, you can't explain it. It's just a thing that you know that person is that person. And that is all that should be important in our friendship. I guess in life, sometimes 2 people can really, really understand each other and really have a trust, respect, and love for each other. It just happens. It's human nature. Next slide. Yeah. Another boy. I've got 2 best friends, Willie and Brian. Like sometimes when me and Willie argue, me and Brian are real close. Then when me and Brian are not doing so good, me and Willie are real close. It's like circles of love. Sometimes we're all close. Another boy. All these quotes are from different kids. They're not from the same kid. They're all from different kids. My ideal best friend is a close friend who I could say anything to, because sometimes you need to spill your heart out to somebody. And if there's nobody there, then you're going to keep it inside. Then you'll always have anger. Then you will have anger. So you need somebody to talk to always. My best friend could just tell me anything and I could tell him anything. Like I always know everything about him. We always chill. Like we don't hide secrets from each other. We tell each other our problems. Another boy, if I'm having problems at home, they'll like counsel me. I just trust them with anything, like deep secrets, anything. Next slide. It's like a bond. We keep secrets. Like if there's something that's important to me, like I could tell him and he won't go make fun of it. Like if my family is having problems or something. And that's critical. We'll talk about that later. Those are the secrets that young boys oftentimes share with their friends. Next slide, please. We always tell each other everything. And I'm like, something happens and I save it for my best friend. What I like most about my best friendship is the connection. It's like, you know how you know somebody for so long, you can talk about anything and you won't even think, oh, what are they thinking? You just talk. Finally, I asked a young boy, one of my team members asked a young boy about his friendships and he says, yeah, because my best friend is like a second person you could speak to. It's like, see how the kids carry a little teddy bear or whatever. And when they cry, they'll hold it up, and stuff. So when you like get upset or something, you just walk over to your closest friend and they'll loosen you up, whatever. They'll be like, yeah, it's all right, even though it's not. And the important thing, so this is a conference on emotional intelligence, is that boys are revealing that they know what's going on here, that they, even though they'll say it's all right, even though it's not. So boys know that other boys cover over their emotions. Next slide. Okay, so the first theme is around shared secrets, the importance of shared secrets in boys' friendships. 80% of the boys that I've interviewed over many, many decades reveal that it's what they want in their friendships or what they have in their friendships or that they yearn for that, especially during early and middle adolescence. That's when you hear that theme so prevalent is 12, 13, 14, 15-year-old boys. That's when you're hearing that theme. You also hear another theme where boys linking it explicitly their friendships to their mental health. One boy says, you need friends to talk to sometimes, like you have nobody to talk to. You don't have a friend, it's hard. You got to keep things bottled up inside. You might just start crying or whatever. Like if a family member is beating on you or something and you can't tell a friend, you might just go out, just do drugs, sell drugs, whatever. Next one. You need someone to talk to. Like you have problems with something, you go talk to him. Remember, it's a him. If you keep it all to yourself, you go crazy. Try to take it out on someone else. Another boy says, without friends, you'll go crazy or mad. You'll be lonely all the time, be depressed. You'd go wacko. Another boy says, my friendships are important because you need a friend or else you'd be depressed. You won't be happy. You'd try to kill yourself because then you'd be all alone and no one to talk to. Next slide. Lee says, if you don't have friends, no, you got no one to tell secrets to. The interviewer says, so what happens then? Lee says, then it's like you need to keep all the secrets to yourself. What do you think it'd be like if you didn't have someone? Lee says, then it's like I'd always think bad stuff in my brain because no one's helping me and I just need to keep all the secrets to myself. Next slide. And finally, as boys reach middle to late adolescence, you begin to hear a struggle. They struggle to hold on to their friendships. They struggle to hold on to those intimate relationships that they need so desperately for their mental health. And they also start to use the phrase no homo, which is the homophobic phrase that suggests that their loss of friendships is very much linked to norms of masculinity and the thought that having close friendships for boys is not so-called normal in our culture, even though it's what boys want. And so boys say things like this. I don't know, when you ask, how have your friendships changed during high school? Boys say, I don't know, maybe not a lot, but I guess that best friends become close friends. So that's basically the only thing that's changed. It's like best friends become close friends become general friends, and then general friends become acquaintances. So they just, if there's a distance, whether it's, I don't know, natural or whatever, you can say that, but it just happens that way. Next one. We used to be close as far as always being around each other now. It's just we're apart, as far as if I need them, they'll still be there. If they need me, I'll be there. But as far as always being together, we're not as close as we were before. Next one. And then finally, do you have a closer best friend this year? And this is a boy in his senior year. And he's told me about his deep friendship in freshman year. He says in his senior year, not really, I think myself. The friend I had, I lost it. That was the only person that I could trust. And we talked about everything. When I was down, he used to help me feel better. The same I did to him. So I feel pretty lonely and sometimes depressed because I don't have no one to go out with, no one to speak on the phone with, to tell my secrets or to help me solve my problems. Why don't you think you have someone? Because I think when it will never be the same, you know. I think that when you have a real friend and you lost it, I don't think you find another one like him. That's the point of view I have. I tried to look for a person, you know, but it's not that easy. Okay, you can go to the next slide. Okay, in that story, in those quotes, what you began to hear is actually what I call a 5-part story about who we are as humans. And number one, that's boys want close friendships with other boys. And guess what? Everybody wants close friendships. But what we've done is we've stereotyped boys as not wanting these emotionally close friendships. And 80% of the thousands of boys I've interviewed sound like the boys I just read. So this is not cherry picking. This is actually what boys sound like. This is what teenage boys sound like when you ask them questions about their friendships. And they struggle to hold on to them as they get older. But we start off with they want them. And we need to pay attention as a culture that they want these close friendships. The second part of the story is what gets in the way. Norms of masculinity get in the way. Norms of masculinity privilege the self over relationships, thinking over feeling, as Mark well knows, independence over interdependence. All those things get in the way of our ability to find and maintain close friendships, and boys reveal that. Then the third part of the story is the clash between what boys want and the culture in which they live, which leads to a crisis of connection. So it's a clash between nature and culture that leads to this crisis of connection. The crisis of connection, as we know, has deadly consequences. Suicide, violence, mass violence. We have all sorts of consequences that the boys reveal. Mass shooters reveal the direct connection between loneliness and violence. And finally, the solution is simply to change the culture so that it better aligns with our nature and the nature of boys and all other humans. And we'll talk about how we can do that. So what I want to do in the last 9 or so minutes I have of the talk, I want to show you that actually this exact 5-part story is repeated in the larger body on science. So boys actually tell us a story that gets repeated in over a century of work in the larger body of science. And it's the same story. And so let's go to the next slide. Okay, I call it, sorry, the previous slide. I call it the science of human connection. Now, next slide, Erin, thanks. So in the science of human connection, it also tells a 5-part story. It's the same 5-part story you just heard from the boys. Humans have remarkable social and emotional capacities and need one another to thrive. Very simply, we've known that for over a century through attachment-based research, through work on with Michael Tomasello. Dozens and dozens of other researchers have concluded that. I'm going to read just one quote, Erin, the next quote, and I'm going to, actually, I'll read 2 quotes and then I'll go on to the next one. Franz de Waal, who's a primatologist, says, we involuntarily enter the bodies of those around us so that their movements and emotions echo within us as if they're our own from the beginning of life. Next quote. Matthew Lieberman, who's a neuroscience, social neuroscience, says, we are wired to be social. We are driven by deep motivations to stay connected to friends and family. We are naturally curious about what is going on in the minds of other people. We will spend our entire lives motivated by social connection. Next slide. Okay, part 2 of the story is we live in a culture that I already said before from the boys. We live in a culture that doesn't value the very qualities that we need to thrive and cooperate. It's also a culture that perpetuates a set of ideologies. And by that, I mean white supremacy, patriarchy, heteronormativity, all those ideologies that we maintain in our society, capitalism, that are premised on a hierarchy of humanness. And this is the important thing to say to educators. It's not only that we put on a hierarchy of humanness, of certain humans are more valuable than other humans, but actually the qualities associated with those humans. So we value the qualities associated with masculinity, and we devalue those qualities associated with femininity. And that's what gets us in the way. We all have the capacity and we all need to think and feel, yet we live in a culture that privileges thinking over feeling and treats thinking as if it's a heavily valued quality, and feeling as it's something that's less important to our thriving. And as you know from everybody taking this workshop, it's critical to our thriving. And I'm putting citations in case people want to read more about these topics. Third part of the story. Third part of this, I'll read a quote quick from a neuroscience, Lise Elliott. Infant brains are so malleable that what begin as small differences at birth become amplified over time as parents and teachers and the culture at large unwittingly reinforce gender stereotypes. And that's really underscoring how we as a culture have created the problem. We've created the problem of gender and racial stereotypes and all sorts of stereotypes that get in the way of human thriving. And we really need to focus our efforts on disrupting those stereotypes that boys and all other humans want to disrupt so they can actually connect to themselves and connect to each other in a more positive and healthy manner. Next slide. The third part of the story is the clash between our culture and our nature, which leads to a crisis of connection. And this is not only do the boys show us this, but this is all throughout the research. And I can send the slides around for people to know the actual citations that show that this clash between nature and culture actually leads to depression, leads to all sorts of problems, depression, loneliness, suicide, etc. Next one. The consequences of the crisis include suicide, substance use, violence, and hate crimes. And again, this is empirically shown that the loneliness and violence has been empirically shown repeatedly. Loneliness and substance use, loneliness and hate crimes, they've all been linked in the literature. If you read the manifestos of school shooters, you will see they make the direct link between the isolation and the violence. And one boy at the UC Santa Barbara in 2015 who killed 8 people, he says into the camera before he did his act of violence, he said, "This is against all you humanity who's let me rot in my own loneliness." And that is revealed, that gives me the chills to even repeat the quote. That reveals how so many boys who are struggling feel like they feel neglected, that nobody's paying attention, and that they're rotting in their own loneliness. And that really comes from a culture that doesn't value what they need to thrive, and certainly not for boys. Okay, next slide. The solution I'm going to say it's simple because it is simple, even though it sounds like it's complicated, it's not. Disrupt the hierarchy of humanness embedded in our ideologies by replacing judgment with curiosity and building connections across and within communities. So the core thing here is the notion that we have to disrupt this hierarchy where we're valuing core human capacities and needs over other core human capacities and needs. We have to disrupt that hierarchy over thinking and feeling. We have to show that it doesn't make any sense. And in fact, it's making a tremendous number of people suffer, including boys and men, but according everybody with whatever their gender identity is. It's making them suffer. And we have all sorts of data to support that. So we have to show that we are human. So we think and feel. We need relationships. We're starving for close relationships. And we need to build societies and schools and institutions that actually nurture those relationships in for young people so that we can thrive and they can thrive. And it also means replacing our ideology, our me, self ideology that's so obsessed with the self. Our social media is just about self-promotion. It's not about building connection. It's not social media. It's me media. It's all about, I'm so cute. I'm so sexy. I'm so talented. I'm so smart. I'm so funny. And that's not connection. That's about self-promotion, and it's making our kids feel much more alienated from each other. Okay, and finally, in the last few minutes, I want to talk about an intervention that we've been doing in schools across New York City, and we're hoping to put in other cities. And if you're interested to know more about it, please contact me. It's called the Listening Project. And if you can go to the next slide. The Listening Project is basically a 26 lesson unit integrated into English and humanities classes, and it trains young people in the method that I have developed called transformative interviewing that allows people to see each other outside of a set of stereotypes. And I train that training with doctoral students and undergraduates at NYU. I also train it with middle school students. We now want to bring it to schools from K through 12 around the country to really get kids and teachers and administrators and even parents involved to begin to learn the method of transformative interviewing, which is a method of engaging with each other that begins to ask real questions of each other, real questions, the questions we really want to know the answer to, and engages our interpersonal curiosity to form connections. And the key thing about connection, and I have to say this to all the educators in the room, the key thing to connection is that connection is rooted in interpersonal curiosity. But we don't value interpersonal curiosity. And the way I know that is because we have a phrase called curiosity killed the cat. And we value intellectual curiosity, but we don't value interpersonal curiosity. We have to start nurturing that embedding that into our schools and into our homes. And so the listening project really begins to do that, brings interpersonal curiosity into the classroom, and students do projects. There's a 5-phase process to it. I don't have time to go into the details, but essentially at the end, they do a biography as a result of an interview with a parent or a grandparent or a teacher or a peer, and they present it to the communities, and it really builds connections and allows people to see their full humanity. Second part, and then I'm almost done, Mark. And then the listening project partners, we have partnerships with all sorts of schools and also with boys clubs. I teach this method in Abu Dhabi in the United Arab Emirates. I teach this in Addis in Ethiopia. We're bringing it to also different countries, Bhutan, et cetera, and in after school programs. So it's something that we want to really help people engage their interpersonal curiosity to help them be more connected, help boys be more connected, girls be more connected, non-gender binary youth be more connected, and help us be more connected to each other, and begin to see each other outside a radically dehumanizing set of stereotypes that has led to our crisis of connection. So I look forward to the questions from Mark, and I appreciate your attention, and thank you so much. And please reach out to me. I'm going to read a quote by James Baldwin at the end before we engage your questions. James Baldwin said a beautiful quote. He says, "The world changes according to the way people see it. And if you alter even but a millimeter the way people look at reality, then you can change it." Thank you so much, everybody.
Thank you, Naomi. Lovely. Really appreciate just the awareness, that you're bringing in terms of this developmental trajectory, which is not a positive trajectory, of our boys, social and emotional lives. I'm wondering, my first question for you is around, like, what are the listening project obviously is a concrete thing that you can do in schools to help people build that curiosity and connection. But is there other recommendations that you would make? We have over 1,300 people who work in schools here.
Yeah.
So what are some concrete things that schools need to be doing right here, right now, today, tomorrow, next year, in order to support boys in being their true, authentic selves?
Yeah, so I would say two things, and I want to extend that also not just boys, but to all your students, there's two things that need to happen. The first thing is we have to understand that the problem is a cultural problem. If we see it as the problem of boys or boys not knowing how to do something, or, this is very consistent, Mark, with your work too. We have to see it as a cultural problem that doesn't value what Mark leads, called emotional intelligence. It doesn't value emotions. It doesn't value friendships and the importance of friendship for thriving. So what schools need to do first and foremost is to normalize that desire, normalize that everybody wants friendships. Talk about how it's so hard to find good friends. Mark and I talk about that. Everybody finds it hard. So you're not alone if you're 12 years old and can't find a good friend. You're not alone. So many boys and girls and all sorts of people struggle with finding close friendships. So you have to normalize it, number one. The second thing you have to do is really nurture that interpersonal curiosity that we naturally are born with. We are born with this profound capacity to ask questions and to engage. And I have to give you two quick stories, Mark, to remind the audience how brilliant we are emotionally as humans. A 5-year-old boy comes home, he's with his mom. His mom is going through a very difficult divorce. She wants to come home and put a happy face on because she doesn't want her son to feel sad. She comes home. The boy at 5 years old looks at his mom with his mom's big smile on her face. And he said, "Mommy, why are you smiling when you're feeling sad?" And really what he's asking at 5 years old is, why are you faking an emotion? And that a 5-year-old can get that. They can get that we fake emotions. And it's a brilliant question. Why do we fake emotions? The second story I have to give you to remind you of the emotional intelligence of humans is, I was just told this by a mom the other day. She said her 5-year-old said, at 5 years old, he said, "Mommy, are you yelling at me because your mom yelled at you?" And I thought, oh my goodness, we come in with that intelligence. And then as a culture, we just zip it out. We just crush it because we don't value it. So in schools, in your classrooms, I don't care what you teach. math, science, English, humanities, art, all those topics. You could be weaving in interpersonal curiosity, asking questions of each other, engaging in real questions, spending time in class engaging in real questions. It could come from a book, it could come from a poem, it could come from a science project, but really engaging with each other around questions and coming to know each other through our questions and through our ability to be interested in not just my story. We're all interested in our own stories, but actually interested in the stories of other people and their parents and their grandparents and the teacher and the teacher's parents and grandparents, et cetera. So bringing that into the classroom, whatever you're doing. And I think in homes, I just want to plug for all you parents. It's the same thing. At the dinner table, engage interpersonal curiosity. We ask questions of each other in my classroom, like a favorite childhood memory. Who do you trust and why? What do you want most in life and why? What do you fear the most in life and why? If you really knew me, you would know. I've asked that of my children. They asked that of me. They asked that of their friends. We've done a worldwide campaign asking each other of those questions. You can come up with hundreds of them. Genuine questions that allow people to express, Mark, in the spirit of your work, to express their vulnerability, as well as reveal something meaningful about themselves that they want to share. Favorite childhood memory is a favorite question of a lot of people. So do those things in schools and in homes. It's easy to do. It's easy, both normalizing it and engaging interpersonal curiosity is easy to do.
So I'm hearing a lot of like examples that are, a lot of taking what you do in terms of and kind of narrowing it into like adding more inquiry. I want to go back to the friendship piece here because, it's interesting. Here we are, we're both, professors at universities and, I'm a self-proclaimed neurotic introvert.
Yeah.
And, I've recently moved and like going to meet people. And I sometimes even struggle, with all my background, like, how do you get to know somebody new? What do you ask?
I know.
And so what from all the years of research and going into schools, are there other concrete things that you can recommend, in terms of just go.
Yeah, no, Mark. I was going to interrupt and say to help you have a better friend, Mark. It's talk to me. That's the solution. No, I mean, I have a lot of thoughts. I mean, I talk to teenage boys a lot in schools, and so I talk to teenagers a lot, but also in all boys schools. I recently had a conversation with 150 boys in one room, and the whole conversation for over an hour was how do you find a friend? How do you keep a friend? And basically what I wanted to do is show the boys that they already knew the answer, but they just wanted it validated. So I got the boys themselves to actually give me the answer. And it really is about it really comes down to asking real questions of each other. It's amazing to me how much we don't ask the questions we really want to ask of each other. So people will say in college, what's your major? Or professionally, Mark, they'll say, what do you do? But that doesn't, it doesn't make me feel closer to tell you what I do. But if you were to ask me, tell me about, I'm really interested in when you were last listened to. When were you last listened to, Naya, that you really felt listened to? That all of a sudden makes me feel much closer to the person because I'm sharing something that I rarely share. I don't talk about that. It affects me every day, but I don't talk about it. And so all of a sudden, Mark and I have had these conversations. We ask real questions of each other. And I think that whole sense of encouraging, regardless of your age, whether you're 5 years old or you're 90 years old, of really just making it happen. Take the risk, be bold, ask real questions. Also, the other things, we have to get rid of that whole concept, that somehow expressing the need for the friendship is kind of lame. And we're all
makes you weak. It's like you're weak, you need a friend.
Absolutely. And that's such a pervasive, and that's part of the problem with the culture. Friendships have been linked to living longer lives, healing from wounds quicker, not getting colds, not getting the flu, dying, longevity, not dying as quickly. I mean, it's been linked to so many profound things. It's even been linked to your perception of task difficulty. You see the task as more difficult if you're standing next to someone who doesn't like you than if you're standing next to a best friend. You actually see the assignment as less difficult standing next to a best friend. And that's been proven a million times. So the idea that we don't value this thing that's so critical, Mark, and that we don't take the risk to just say, you know what, Mark, I need our friendship. I need it. I need it to thrive. I need it every day. I need to hear your voice, and I want to ask you a bunch of questions because I'm super curious, of how you feel and what's going on. And, a time in which you didn't feel listened to, or did feel listened to, or I could think of a million questions. When you listen to seventh graders, they ask questions like this, Mark. I ask them for their thick question that they're dying to ask each other. And they ask questions. You think in seventh graders, they're not going to get the notion of thick questions. They do immediately. And so one boy said, very shy, very introverted 12-year-old, said in barely a whisper, he said, my question is, where do you feel safe? I mean, and the whole class is like stunned that he came out with that question. And then other people said, where is home for you? Where do you belong? When do you don't belong? What do you do? All these kind of profound questions that young people want to ask each other, and we want to ask each other, but we don't ask. I mean, that's it's just shocking to me.
What you're making me think about is that you don't really know someone until you know their story.
Exactly.
So these questions, what you're getting at really is that it's asking the questions that reveal who you really are in terms of how you think, feel, the decisions you have, your interests, etc.
Exactly. I mean, a young person who was being interviewed said to one of our team members, she said, do you want to know what I think or what I really think? And at some level, we get to what people think, but not what they really think. And so at some level, as a culture, I want to make a mass movement with your center, with Ruler. I want to make a mass movement, right, which you're already doing with Ruler. But I want to add the sort of friendship component in there to make it that we all value emotional intelligence, obviously, because you can't be a friend if you don't have emotional intelligence. You literally cannot have friendships if you're not emotionally intelligent. So the emotional intelligence and friendships are the same, right? They're the same bundle. And so if we're taking seriously our friendships are critical to our mental and physical health, then we have to change everything. We have to change what we do. We have to change our priorities. I have to throw out a finding to just freak everybody out for a minute, how bad we are as a culture, Mark. Our colleague at the Harvard Center for Making Caring Common finds that 80% of parents value academic achievement over kindness. That's a nasty, brutal culture, right? That values academic achievement over kindness. So it really is disrupting that, Mark, which you're already doing with your tremendous efforts. And I want to add that we have to take our friendships seriously from the time when we're little children to the time in which we die. Our friendships are critical at every single stage. We have to model them for our students, model them for our kids. We have to engage with them. We're also, Mark, you always bring this topic up too. Also help people deal with conflict in friendships, feelings of betrayal in friendships. We deal with that with romantic relationships. Why don't we deal with that with friendships? It's hard when someone's done something mean to you as a friend. You don't want to drop them because you've known them for so many years, but at the same time, you're very, very hurt by it. I mean, all that kind of stuff we don't deal with. And it's interesting to me that we do deal with it in marriages, but we don't deal with it with friendships, which are equally important. And
we don't do it so well because 50% of marriages end up in divorce. So we probably could do better there too.
Yeah, exactly. We don't really deal with it, but at least we sort of surface.
We're talking about it, right?
Yeah, we talk about it.
No, but I hate to bring this to the end, but I want to say one last thing, which is one, thank you for being my friend. And thank you now for being a friend to 1,400 people around the world who are doing this work. And lastly, the world is a better place because of you. So thank you.
Thank you, Mark. Oh, I want to give you a big hug. And thank you, Mark. I feel the same way about you. Thank you so much and for having me.
Thank you for having it.
Okay. Bye. Bye, everybody.
Bye, Niobe.
Bye.
Gosh, that was great. I should ask everybody, how are you feeling? No, really, how are you feeling? I was in a funk this morning, just to be fully transparent. It's kind of dreary where I am at right now. And I was just thinking about how we don't get to be with each other. We're still in this virtual webinar format for our conference. And I don't know, just listening to Niobe activated some neurochemicals that are making me feel more connected to all of you. And really happy about that. So, Erin, I think we're going to move into the next phase of our conference, which is something that is really near and dear to my heart, which are the awards. Am I right?
You are right.
Thank you. So everyone, all of you, or some of you may know, that I was inspired to do this work on emotional intelligence because I had a mentor early in my life who was my Uncle Marvin, who was a middle school teacher in the Catskill Mountains of New York State, who helped me unpack my childhood trauma, who helped me unpack my feelings of alienation as a child and my own despair. And I give him all the credit in the world for not only being my inspiration, but my hero. And literally, I was talking with someone yesterday, you know, around how one person could have that much impact on you in terms of, you know, my entire career, right, is built upon those early relationships. So we've created an award at the Center for Emotional Intelligence for people who are doing remarkable work on Ruler, people who have shown that they can do this work with quality, with integrity, and even sustainability. About 7 years ago, Dawn Brooks DaCosta, one of our Ruler superstars, got that award. And we're going to introduce that award through a short video from Dawn. So let's go to the video, Erin.
My name is Dawn DaCosta. I'm the principal of Thurgood Marshall Academy Lower School in Harlem, New York City. And Ruler has been a key part of our school and of my leadership for many years. For us, it has become certainly an organic part of what we provide to our school family, which includes a holistic approach to their learning and their care. And so Ruler has been a key component of that approach. Our children, as you know, with the program are checking in on their moods. We have charters, we have family charters, we have a staff charter that we use at every meeting still many, many years later, and always looking to deepen the work and get stronger in the work. For us, very specifically, our approach to social emotional learning has been a culturally responsive approach, and Ruler has been weaved in seamlessly to the approach that we use to make sure that we know our children in their holistic selves. And so who they are culturally, but also who they are socially and who they are emotionally as well. Certainly, it's helped us to develop some really strong relationships, to build trust, to always center the emotional health and wellness of all members of our school family on anything that we plan to do. And so it's been a powerful piece at our school, specifically during this time of during the pandemic and during a time of challenges and racial unrest and political challenges. We've been able to utilize the tools that we've learned through Ruler to help heal our community, to help address the self-care, to be compassionate, to humanize our approach to all of the events that are happening that are taking a toll on our school community. And Ruler, we're so thankful that we had this tool before we entered into the pandemic and hybrid learning, because it's really been key on a day-to-day basis for us to continue to check in while we are feeling worried, afraid, traumatized, and our families, students and teachers and staff have been experiencing a roller coaster of emotions since the beginning of the pandemic. We have realized that during this time, the need for relationships has heightened immensely. And it's actually been the relationships that we build that have been most important in our successful day-to-day interaction with each other during this time. So our students are still checking in on their moods online and in person. Our families are still receiving the supports that they need. Our families are still doing their family charters at home. We're still checking in as staff at every meeting that we have and making sure that we practice mindfulness and compassion for one another so that we can take care of each other during this really challenging time. So the sense of community that we've built with using Ruler and using the approach where we are genuinely concerned about the emotions and feelings of others, and then making sure that we interact with them in the way that is both compassionate, empathetic, and best supportive at that time. And so, with all of the emotions that we have been enduring, the relationships and the social emotional learning has certainly been vital to us during this time of the pandemic. And so, it's a key part of our school experience. And we are so grateful for the work and being able to continue and deepen it and learn through it.
Thank you, Erin, for showing that. It's amazing how after hearing Niobe's keynote and then hearing Dawn speak, I think this connection, right? This whole compassion, empathy, perspective taking, being there for each other during these challenging times. And so on behalf of our center, I just want to say that we are here with you. We want to support you. My motto is whatever it takes to do the best work possible so that more and more children and adults can thrive. And I am blessed that I had an uncle who provided that for me. And I think it's being other-oriented, right, is what is important right now. And so I'm proud to say that we have chosen 3 people this year to be our award winners. We have people from different jobs, different aspects of school professionals. And we're going to go to the first one right now. So I know Raina is probably at the conference and now she's probably jumping up and down and screaming and saying, oh my goodness, I can't believe I just got this award. And so Raina, you know that we think the world of you. I watch your stuff on social media. I'm like, gosh, how come I didn't think about that? I'm just blown away by your implementation. Our team chose you. And so for those of you who don't know, Raina has been doing Ruler for a number of years. She is the SEL teacher at West Haverstraw Elementary in West Haverstraw, New York. And she's being recognized for her outstanding Ruler classroom implementation. I can't tell you how inspired I am by the work you do, by the creativity that you have brought to Ruler. And since the start of the pandemic, her tireless work to bring SEL to distance learning has inspired many other fellow Ruler educators to continue to strive to make emotional intelligence central to their students and families. So congratulations, Raina. Your award is on its way. Next one, please. Steve, congratulations. Steve is the current assistant superintendent for Ansonia Public Schools in Ansonia, Connecticut. He's being recognized for his outstanding school-wide and district-wide implementation of Ruler. Steve's been working with Ruler for over 12 years, which is remarkable. He's brought Ruler to multiple schools and districts. He can keep a job. He just keeps on getting bigger jobs. That was a joke, Steve. And he was a fellow with us with our Changemaker Fellowship for 2 years, served as an advisor for our think tanks. And so Steve, congratulations. Thank you for doing this work and spreading the Ruler love across Connecticut. And our third winner. Our third winner is Mariela Chevry. And Mariela is the parent coordinator at PS 101Q. And as all of you know, Ruler is a systemic approach to SEL. It's about leaders, teachers, students, and families. And we want to make sure that we acknowledge how critical families are to both the implementation and sustainability of Ruler. When you think about it, right? Kids are going home and telling their parents, "Mommy, I'm in the red," or we've heard parents say, like, "My daughter just came home, she told me I'm in the red." Like, what's up with that? So Mariela is being recognized for her outstanding Ruler implementation with families. She's been working with Ruler for the last 3 years, and she is the first to step in to build personal relationships and share stories with families in her school community. She's really been skillful at shepherdizing the connection of emotional intelligence to everyday challenges and successes that her families in her school experience. So thank you, Mariela. Felicitaciones, congratulations. I'm very excited for you, and thank you for being a role model for us. All right, so we have to continue with this amazing conference. What I'd like to do now is welcome you to the second day of our Ruler sessions. Remember, there are concurrent sessions starting at 1 p.m. So you've got 10 minutes to get your tea, use the restroom, whatever you need to do to refresh yourself. Please make sure to visit the agenda section of the event app to select your sessions. Remember that all the sessions are recorded. So if you can't see one, or there's 2 that you want to see, but you can only get to 1, don't worry about it. You can watch it later. And on that note, I just want to say thank you for being here with us. We care deeply about you, and we look forward to having a fabulous day 2 of our conference. And see you throughout the day, and back at the end of the day to bring our day to a close. Thank you, everyone.